The crystal champagne flute, nearly slipped from Lorelei Foster's manicured fingers. As she spotted him across the opulent ballroom, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a slightly worn suit, patiently wiping ice cream from a small girl's face with a paper napkin. Lorelei wasn't sure why this particular father caught her attention amid hundreds of wedding guests at the Plaza Hotel, but something in the tender way he cared for his daughter made her pause mid-conversation with New York's elite. Lorelei excused herself from the circle of investment bankers discussing market trends and walked toward the refreshment table, pretending to need another drink. At 34, she'd built Foster Innovations from the ground up, transforming her software startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire. The New York Times had recently named her among the 50 most powerful women in business. Yet here she was, inexplicably drawn to a man who clearly didn't belong among Manhattan's upper crust. "Daddy, can I have another one?" The little girl, around 6 years old with auburn pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, pointed at the chocolate fountain. "Emma, sweetheart, I think you've had enough sugar for today," he responded gently. "Remember what happened at Aunt Kathy's birthday?" The girl giggled. "I got sick on Uncle Rob's shoes." "Exactly. And we don't want a repeat performance at Cousin Mia's wedding, do we?" Emma sighed dramatically. "I guess not." Lorelei couldn't help smiling as she approached. "That chocolate fountain is pretty tempting. I'm having a hard time resisting it myself." The man looked up, and Lorelei was struck by his eyes, a warm hazel that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "It's definitely the centerpiece," he agreed, straightening up. "Though I'm more impressed by the ice sculpture. Never seen anything like it." "Daddy makes ice sculptures, too," Emma announced proudly. "He's the best one ever." "Is that so?" Lorelei asked, genuinely intrigued. The man rubbed the back of his neck, looking slightly embarrassed. "I do some carving, yes. Nothing like this, though." He extended his hand. "Xavier Porter, and this is my daughter, Emma." "Lorelei Foster." She shook his hand, noting the roughness of his palm against her smooth one. "How do you know the bride or groom?" "The bride, Mia, is my cousin. Well, second cousin, technically. Her mom and my mom are first cousins." He smiled. "Family is complicated. Emma, don't touch that." Xavier suddenly called out as his daughter reached toward a delicate flower arrangement. He moved quickly to pull her hand back. "Sorry," he said to Lorelei. "She's curious about everything." "No worries. Curiosity is the foundation of learning," Lorelei responded. "I was the same way as a child. Drove my parents crazy taking apart every electronic device in the house." Xavier laughed. "And now I build them instead." She smiled. "What about you? What do you do when you're not creating ice sculptures?" "I teach high school art and run a small woodworking business on the side." "Nothing glamorous, but it keeps us going." He looked at Emma with unmistakable love. "And allows me to be home when this one gets out of school." Lorelei felt a twinge of something unfamiliar. Envy, perhaps. Despite her success, her personal life consisted mainly of work, with the occasional charity gala or corporate dinner. The easy affection between father and daughter was touching. "Daddy, I need to go to the bathroom," Emma announced, tugging on Xavier's sleeve. "Of course, sweetie." Xavier looked apologetically at Lorelei. "It was nice meeting you." "You too." Lorelei watched them walk away, Emma skipping beside her father, her hand firmly clasped in his. As they disappeared into the crowd, Lorelei felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. She turned back to the reception, where her COO, Marcus, was signaling for her to join a conversation with potential investors. That was her world business deals and networking. Not single fathers with warm smiles and chocolate-smudged daughters. Yet as the evening progressed, she found herself scanning the room, hoping to catch another glimpse of Xavier Porter and his daughter. The opportunity came later when the dancing started. Lorelei was nursing a glass of champagne at her table, fielding emails on her phone, when a small voice piped up beside her. "Aren't you going to dance?" Lorelei looked up to find Emma standing there, her flower girl dress slightly wrinkled, a serious expression on her freckled face. I'm not much of a dancer, Lorelei admitted. My daddy says everyone can dance. You just have to feel the music in your heart. Emma demonstrated with a little twirl. See, it's easy, Lorelei laughed. You make it look easy, that's for sure. Emma. Xavier appeared, looking slightly out of breath. I told you to stay where I could see you. He turned to Lorelei. I'm sorry if she's bothering you. Not at all. She was just giving me dancing lessons. She's very generous that way, Xavier said with a fond smile, always sharing her expertise. Emma tugged on her father's hand. Daddy, you should ask this lady to dance. You said you needed to practice more. Xavier's face flushed. Emma, Miss Foster probably has other plans. Actually, I don't, Lorelei surprised herself by saying, and I could use some practice myself. Xavier looked at her uncertainly. Are you sure? I'm not exactly Fred Astaire. Neither am I Ginger Rogers, Lorelei replied, standing up and smoothing her emerald silk gown, but I'm willing to risk it if you are. Xavier hesitated, then offered his hand with an almost formal bow that made Emma giggle. In that case, may I have this dance, Miss Foster? You may, Mr. Porter. Lorelei took his hand, feeling an unexpected flutter in her stomach as they walked to the dance floor. The band was playing a slow jazz number, and Xavier carefully placed one hand at the small of her back, keeping a respectful distance between them. I should warn you, it's been a while, he said. For me too, Lorelei admitted. In truth, she couldn't remember the last time she'd danced with someone who wasn't a business associate or potential client. They moved awkwardly at first, trying to find a rhythm. Xavier accidentally stepped on her toe once, apologizing profusely, but soon they settled into a comfortable pattern. Lorelei became aware of how solid he felt, how his hand was warm against hers. So, what brings A? Xavier seemed to search for the right words. You can say billionaire, Lorelei supplied with a small smile. I'm not offended by my tax bracket, Xavier laughed. What brings a billionaire to my cousin's wedding? I wouldn't have thought Mia ran in such elevated circles. I'm here with Marcus Chen, my coup. He's friends with the groom from college. Lorelei nodded toward where Marcus was chatting with a group by the bar. Business never stops, even at weddings. We're meeting potential investors tomorrow. That sounds exhausting, Xavier commented. Do you ever take a break? The question caught Lorelei off guard. Most people in her circle would never ask such a thing. Work was life, and ambition was admired above all else. I love what I do, she said finally. It doesn't feel like work most days. Xavier nodded. I understand that. Teaching can be challenging, but watching kids discover their creativity makes it worthwhile. What do you teach? Art and design. I run the shop program too: woodworking, basic construction. Skills that can translate to real-world jobs for kids who aren't college-bound. That's admirable, Lorelei said sincerely. It doesn't pay like tech, but it has its rewards. His eyes drifted to Emma, who was now dancing with an elderly woman, presumably a relative. The schedule works well for us. After Emma's mom left when she was 2, I needed something flexible. Lorelei felt a stab of sympathy. You're raising her alone, for the most part. My mom helps when she can, but she lives upstate. Emma's mother sends a check occasionally, but she's not really in the picture. The song ended, and they stepped apart. Lorelei was surprised by how disappointed she felt. Thank you for the dance, Xavier said, and for not laughing at my rusty skills. I enjoyed it, Lorelei replied honestly. It was a nice change of pace. Daddy, Emma called, running up to them. Grandma says it's time for cake. Xavier smiled at Lorelei. Duty calls. It was nice dancing with you, Lorelei. Likewise, Xavier. She watched as he took Emma's hand and disappeared into the crowd again. Lorelei returned to her table, where her phone displayed 3 missed calls and 11 new emails. She should focus on work. Tomorrow's investor meeting was crucial for their expansion into the European market. Yet she found herself watching Xavier throughout the evening, noting how he helped an elderly guest to her seat, how he listened intently when the bride's father gave a speech, how he never seemed to lose track of Emma even while engaging with other guests. When the reception was winding down and Lorelei was preparing to leave, Emma appeared again, this time holding a small napkin package. "I saved you some cake," she said, offering it to Lorelei. "It's the chocolate part with the raspberry filling, it's the best part." Touched, Lorelei accepted the slightly squished package. "Thank you, Emma. That was very thoughtful. Daddy said you probably didn't get any because you were working." Emma pointed to Lorelei's phone. "He said working people sometimes forget to eat cake, which is very sad." Lorelei smiled. "Your dad is right. That is sad." Xavier approached, carrying Emma's small cardigan. "Emma, are you bothering Miss Foster again? I'm giving her cake," Emma explained. "Like you said." Xavier looked embarrassed. "I mentioned you seemed busy, but I didn't actually suggest cake delivery." "I'm glad she took the initiative," Lorelei said. "Business meetings are much better with chocolate cake." Xavier helped Emma put on her cardigan. "We should head out. It's way past someone's bedtime." "It was nice meeting both of you," Lorelei said, feeling strangely reluctant to say goodbye. "You too." Xavier hesitated, then added, "Maybe our paths will cross again sometime." "Maybe they will," Lorelei replied, though she knew how unlikely that was. Their worlds were too different. As they walked away, Emma turned and waved enthusiastically. Lorelei waved back, suddenly aware of an emptiness she hadn't felt before. Marcus appeared at her elbow. "Ready to go, cars out front." "Yes, all set." Lorelei gathered her clutch and wrap. "Who was that you were talking to?" Marcus asked as they walked toward the exit. "Just some other guests," Lorelei replied, unsure why she felt protective of her interaction with Xavier and Emma. Later that night in her penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, Lorelei unwrapped the cake Emma had saved her. It was indeed squished, but she ate it anyway, savoring the rich chocolate and tart raspberry. She couldn't remember the last time someone had thought to save her dessert. Her assistant scheduled her meals with the same efficiency as her meeting's nutrition was simply another box to check in maintaining peak performance. The next morning, Lorelei woke to her usual 5 a.m. alarm. As she went through her rigorous workout routine, followed by breakfast and her first dozen emails, she tried to push thoughts of Xavier Porter from her mind. By the time she arrived at her office in the gleaming Foster Innovations Tower, she had almost succeeded. The investor meeting went well, with the European partners committing to the full funding package for the new Berlin office. Lorelei should have been ecstatic this was a major win for the company. Instead, she found herself distracted, wondering what Xavier and Emma were doing on this sunny Sunday. "Earth to Lorelei," Marcus said, waving a hand in front of her face. They were alone in the conference room after the other executives had left. "What's going on with you? You've been somewhere else all day." Lorelei shook her head. "Nothing, just tired." Marcus gave her a skeptical look. "I've seen you close deals after 72 hours without sleep. This is something else." "It's nothing," she insisted, gathering her papers. "Let's focus on the Berlin timeline." But that evening, as Lorelei sat alone in her penthouse with takeout she barely tasted, she found herself thinking about Xavier again. There had been something refreshingly genuine about him. In her world of calculated networking and strategic relationships, people like Xavier Porter were rare. On Monday morning, Lorelei made a decision that surprised even herself. Using her considerable resources, she found Xavier Porter's school, Westridge High School in Queens, and his email address through the staff directory. Before she could overthink it, she sent a brief message. "Mr. Porter, it was a pleasure meeting you and Emma at the wedding. I wanted to follow up on your ice sculptures. My foundation sponsors several arts programs, and we're always looking for instructors for our youth workshops. If you might be interested, please let me know." Lorelei Foster she hit send before she could change her mind, then immediately regretted it. What was she doing? The Foster Foundation did sponsor arts programs, but they had a robust network of instructors already. This transparent attempt to reconnect was embarrassing. To her surprise, Xavier replied within the hour. "Miss Foster, nice to hear from you." Emma hasn't stopped talking about dancing with the pretty lady in the green dress. As for the ice sculptures, I'm flattered by your interest, but I'm strictly amateur level. However, I do run a summer woodworking program for at-risk youth that's always short on funding. If your foundation has any interest in that, I'd be happy to provide more information. Xavier Porter Lorelei smiled at the mention of Emma and appreciated Xavier's honesty about his skills. She responded immediately. The woodworking program sounds exactly like the type of initiative we support. Would you be available for coffee this week to discuss details? I could come to Queens. His reply came that evening. Coffee sounds great. There's a place called Millwood Coffee near the school. Would Wednesday at 4 p.m. work? Emma will be at her grandmother's, so we could talk without interruption. Lorelei rearranged a board meeting to make it work. On Wednesday, she took a rare personal day, spending the morning at home before having her driver take her to Queens. She had changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans, a cashmere sweater, and low heels casual, but still put together. Millwood Coffee was a small, cozy establishment with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Xavier was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with papers spread out before him. He stood when he saw her, looking surprised. "I half expected you to cancel," he admitted as they shook hands. "Why is that?" Lorelei asked, taking a seat across from him. "I figured once you'd had time to think about it, you'd realize your foundation probably has better things to fund than my little program." Lorelei smiled. "I never make offers I don't intend to follow through on. That's not how I built my business." The barista came over, and Xavier ordered a simple black coffee. Lorelei requested the same, though she usually preferred more elaborate espresso drinks. "So, tell me about your program," Lorelei said once their coffees arrived. Xavier's face lit up as he explained the summer woodworking initiative he'd started 3 years ago. What had begun as an informal workshop for a few students had grown to serve 30 teenagers each summer, teaching them not just woodworking skills, but also business basics, as they sold their creations at local markets. "The problem is space and materials," Xavier explained. "We're currently working out of my cousin's garage, but we've outgrown it, and quality wood is expensive, not to mention tools." Lorelei listened intently, genuinely impressed by what he'd accomplished with minimal resources. "How much funding do you currently receive?" Xavier laughed. "Funding is a generous term for what we have. I put in about $2,000 of my own money each summer, and we got a $500 grant from the local community board last year. The kids' sales bring in maybe another $1,000, which goes right back into materials." Lorelei didn't show her shock at the meager budget. Foster Foundation regularly issued grants in the hundreds of thousands. "And what would be your ideal scenario?" she asked. Xavier hesitated. "Honestly, a dedicated workshop space, maybe 1,500 square feet, better tools. Enough materials that the kids could work without worrying about waste. A stipend for a second instructor." He shrugged. "But that's pie-in-the-sky stuff. How much would all that cost, approximately?" Xavier did some quick calculations on a napkin. "For a year. Maybe 50,000, including rent in this area, but even 10,000 would make a huge difference." Lorelei nodded, making notes on her phone. "I'd like to see some of the students' work, if possible. I have photos." Xavier pulled out his phone and showed her pictures of various projects' chairs, tables, decorative boxes, even some intricate carved pieces. The quality was impressive, especially for teenage beginners. As they talked, their conversation naturally drifted from the program to more personal topics. Xavier spoke about his teaching philosophy, his approach to fatherhood, and his own background growing up in Queens with parents who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. "My dad was a carpenter," he explained. "Taught me everything I know about working with wood. He died when I was in college, but I still feel him looking over my shoulder whenever I'm working on a project." "Is that why you became a teacher?" Lorelei asked. "To pass on his knowledge," Xavier considered this. "Partly. But mostly, I just love seeing kids discover they can create something with their own hands. In a world where everything is digital, there's something powerful about making something tangible. I understand that, Lorelei said. Despite running a tech company, I still get the most satisfaction from the physical products we create. They talked for over an hour, long after their coffee had gone cold. Lorelei was surprised by how comfortable she felt with Xavier. There was none of the calculation she was accustomed to in her business interactions, no sense that he was trying to impress her or gain an advantage. "What about Emma?" she asked eventually. "She seems like a wonderful child." Xavier's expression softened. "She's everything to me." Smart, creative, stubborn as hell sometimes. Reminds me a lot of her mother, actually. If you don't mind me asking, what happened with her mother? Xavier sighed. Olivia and I met in college, got married young, had Emma a few years later. But Olivia had big ambitions, wanted to travel, build her career in fashion. A child and a husband teaching high school in Queens didn't fit that vision. He shrugged. "Can't really blame her. We wanted different things." "That must have been difficult," Lorelei said quietly. The hardest part was explaining to Emma why her mom wasn't around much. Kids that age blame themselves. Xavier's jaw tightened. "But we've made it work. Emma knows she's loved, and that's what matters." Lorelei found herself admiring his resilience and dedication. In her world, personal setbacks were often hidden behind PR statements and private settlements. Xavier's straightforward acceptance of his circumstances was refreshing. "What about you?" Xavier asked. "The business world must be challenging, especially for women." Lorelei smiled wryly. "It has its moments. I've been called difficult, aggressive, and worse. The same behaviors that get men labeled as assertive leaders earn women much less flattering descriptions. Yet you've succeeded beyond most men in your field," Xavier observed. "By working twice as hard and making personal sacrifices," Lorelei admitted. "My last relationship ended because he claimed I was emotionally unavailable." "Were you?" The direct question surprised Lorelei. Most people would have offered platitudes or changed the subject. "Probably," she conceded after a moment. "My company was in a critical growth phase. I couldn't be everything to everyone." Xavier nodded thoughtfully. "It's always about choices and priorities. Neither is wrong, just different paths." As they prepared to leave, Lorelei made a decision. "I'd like to visit your current workshop space, see it in action. Would that be possible?" "Of course." Xavier looked pleased. "We meet on Saturdays during the school year. This weekend, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. "I'll be there," Lorelei promised. Outside the coffee shop, they stood awkwardly for a moment. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me," Xavier said finally. "Regardless of what happens with the funding, it was nice to see you again." "I enjoyed it too," Lorelei replied, surprised by how much she meant it. "I'll see you Saturday." As her driver pulled up, Xavier looked at the luxury car with raised eyebrows but made no comment. Lorelei felt suddenly self-conscious about the obvious display of wealth. "The address?" she asked, 1 foot in the car. "I'll text it to you," Xavier said. "You have my number from the emails." As the car pulled away, Lorelei looked back to see Xavier still standing there, watching her go with an expression she couldn't quite read. Back in her penthouse that evening, Lorelei found herself researching youth woodworking programs and appropriate funding levels. She also had her assistant clear her schedule for Saturday morning, something she rarely did for anything short of a medical emergency. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather for late October. Lorelei dressed deliberately in jeans, a simple blouse, and flat shoes. She even left her designer handbag behind, opting instead for a small crossbody bag that wouldn't seem out of place in a workshop environment. The address Xavier had provided led to a residential neighborhood in Queens, where a detached garage behind a modest house had been converted into a makeshift workshop. As Lorelei approached, she could hear the sound of tools and voices. Inside, she found organized chaos. 8 teenagers were working on various projects, with Xavier moving between them, offering guidance and assistance. A young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, was helping a girl operate a sander. Emma was there too, sitting at a small desk in the corner, focused intently on what appeared to be homework. She looked up when Lorelei entered and her face lit up. "It's the cake lady," she exclaimed, jumping up and running over. "Daddy said you might come today. Do you want to see what I'm making?" Before Lorelei could respond, Emma had grabbed her hand and was pulling her toward the desk. "It's a jewelry box for Grandma's birthday," she explained, showing Lorelei a small wooden box with flowers carved into the lid. "Daddy helped with the hard parts, but I did the sanding all by myself." "It's beautiful," Lorelei said sincerely. "Your grandmother will love it." Xavier approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "You made it," he said, sounding pleased. "I said I would." Lorelei looked around the space. It was cramped but well organized, with tools neatly arranged and safety protocols clearly posted. "This is impressive, Xavier. You've made the most of the space," he smiled. "We manage. Let me introduce you to everyone." For the next hour, Lorelei observed the workshop in action. She spoke with each student, asking about their projects and what they'd learned. Many came from challenging backgrounds: foster care, single-parent households, neighborhoods with high crime rates, but here, they were focused and engaged, proud of the skills they were developing. "This is Maria," Xavier introduced the young woman who had been helping earlier. "She was in my first art class 6 years ago, and now she's studying design at community college. She volunteers here on weekends." "The program changed my life," Maria told Lorelei frankly. "Before Mr. Porter's class, I was failing everything. No one had ever told me I was good at anything before." She gestured to a beautifully crafted chair in the corner. "I made that last summer. Now I'm planning to start my own furniture business after graduation." As the session ended and the students began cleaning up, Xavier took Lorelei outside to talk privately. "What do you think?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I'm impressed," Lorelei said honestly. "You're doing important work here, Xavier. These kids clearly benefit enormously." He smiled. "They're amazing. Given half a chance, they can accomplish incredible things. I agree, and I want to help you give them that chance." Lorelei had made her decision. "The Foster Foundation would like to offer you a grant of $75,000 for the first year, with the possibility of renewal based on program outcomes." Xavier stared at her, speechless. "The additional funds beyond your estimate would allow for some program expansion and maybe a small stipend for yourself as director," Lorelei continued. "You shouldn't have to fund this out of your own pocket." I don't know what to say," Xavier finally managed. "That's far more than I expected." "It's what the program deserves," Lorelei said simply. "I'll have the paperwork sent over next week. We try to keep the process relatively straightforward." Xavier shook his head in disbelief. "Thank you. This will change everything for these kids." "You're the one changing their lives," Lorelei replied. "We're just providing resources." There was a moment of silence between them, filled with something Lorelei couldn't quite name. "Would you and Emma like to get lunch?" she found herself asking. "To celebrate?" Xavier's smile widened. "We'd love that." They ended up at a small local pizzeria that Emma declared had the best cheese pizza in the universe. As they ate, Emma dominated the conversation, telling Lorelei about school, her friends, and her numerous creative projects. "Daddy says I'm just like him, always making things," she said proudly between bites. "Do you make things too?" Lorelei considered the question. "I make companies and computer programs, not as tangible as your father's work, but still creative in its way." Emma nodded seriously. "That's important too. My teacher says computers help people do stuff faster." "That's the goal," Lorelei agreed, amused by the child's straightforward assessment. As Emma went to look at the dessert display, Lorelei turned to Xavier. "She's remarkable. You've done an amazing job with her." "Thanks." Xavier watched his daughter with obvious love. "It hasn't always been easy, but she makes it all worthwhile." "I can see that." Lorelei hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see your woodworking sometime. The actual process, I mean." Xavier looked surprised. "Really?" It's not very exciting to watch. I'm interested. Lorelei wasn't sure why it mattered to her, but it did. I spend so much time in the digital world, I'm curious about more traditional crafts. Well, I usually work in the evenings after Emma goes to bed, Xavier said. You'd be welcome to stop by sometime, though my home workshop is even smaller than the garage you saw today. I'd like that, Lorelei said. Emma returned to the table. Can we get ice cream? They have cookie dough. Xavier looked at his watch. Actually, we should head out. You have dance class in 40 minutes. Lorelei felt a pang of disappointment as they prepared to leave. She reached for the check, but Xavier was faster. Please, let me, he said. It's the least I can do after what you're doing for the program. The Foundation's grant and this lunch are completely separate, Lorelei insisted. This is just friends having pizza. Xavier hesitated, then nodded. Split it, Lorelei agreed, appreciating that he wanted to maintain his dignity. Many men she'd known would have either insisted on paying entirely or been comfortable letting her cover it all. Xavier's middle ground spoke to his character. Outside the restaurant, Emma gave Lorelei an unexpected hug. Will you come see us again? She asked. Lorelei glanced at Xavier, who smiled. I'd like that, she told Emma. Maybe I could see that jewelry box when it's finished? Yes, Emma bounced excitedly. And you can come for dinner. Daddy makes the best spaghetti. Emma, Xavier said gently, Miss Foster is very busy. We shouldn't presume on her time. Actually, Lorelei said, I'd love to come for dinner sometime. If the invitation is open. Xavier looked pleased. It is. How about next Friday, say 6:30? I'll be there, Lorelei promised. As she watched them walk away, Emma skipping alongside her father, Lorelei realized she was looking forward to Friday with an enthusiasm she usually reserved for major business achievements. It was a strange feeling, but not an unwelcome one. The following week passed in a blur of meetings, conference calls, and strategic planning sessions. Lorelei handled it all with her usual efficiency, but her thoughts often drifted to Xavier and Emma. She found herself wondering what they were doing, whether Emma had finished her grandmother's jewelry box, if Xavier was carving something new in his workshop. On Friday morning, she called her assistant. Jessica, I need a gift appropriate for a 6-year-old girl who likes art and crafts. There was a brief pause on the line. Are we sponsoring another children's charity event? No, it's personal, Lorelei said, feeling oddly defensive. Just something small but thoughtful. Of course, Jessica replied, professional as always despite her obvious curiosity. I'll have some options for you by lunchtime. Later that day, Lorelei found herself holding a beautifully wrapped package containing a high-quality children's woodworking kit, complete with pre-cut pieces, child-safe tools, and illustrated instructions for various projects. For Xavier, she'd selected a rare book on traditional Japanese woodworking techniques that her research suggested would interest him. At precisely 6:30, Lorelei arrived at Xavier's address, a modest 2-bedroom house in a working-class neighborhood of Queens. She deliberately asked her driver to drop her off a block away, not wanting to create a spectacle with the luxury car. Emma opened the door before Lorelei could even knock. You came, she exclaimed, as though she doubted it would happen. Of course I did, Lorelei smiled, stepping inside. I promised, didn't I? The home was small but welcoming, with warm colors and personal touches everywhere. Art, presumably Emma's, covered the refrigerator, and several impressive wooden pieces furnished the living room. A coffee table with intricate inlay work particularly caught Lorelei's eye. Xavier emerged from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked more relaxed than she'd seen him before. Welcome, he said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Dinner's almost ready. It smells amazing, Lorelei said truthfully. The aroma of garlic, tomatoes, and herbs filled the house. Daddy made his special sauce, Emma informed her importantly. He only makes it for special people. Xavier looked embarrassed. It's just a family recipe, nothing fancy. I brought these, Lorelei said, offering the gifts. Just a small thank you for the invitation. Emma eagerly accepted her package while Xavier looked surprised. You didn't need to bring anything, he said, but his pleased expression belied his words. As Emma tore into her gift with enthusiasm, Xavier carefully unwrapped his book. His eyes widened when he saw what it was. This must have been expensive, he said quietly. I thought you might find it interesting, Lorelei replied, deliberately not addressing the cost. The techniques are fascinating, even to someone with limited knowledge like me. It's incredible, Xavier said, already flipping through the pages with reverent hands. Thank you. Emma, meanwhile, was exclaiming over her woodworking kit. Look, Daddy, I can make my own things now. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Xavier smiled. What do you say to Miss Foster? Thank you. Emma launched herself at Lorelei for a hug. Can we start a project after dinner? It's getting late, Em, Xavier said gently. Maybe tomorrow. For now, can you set the table while I finish up? As Emma hurried to complete her task, Xavier invited Lorelei into the kitchen. Can I get you something to drink? I have wine, beer, water. Wine would be lovely, Lorelei said, leaning against the counter as Xavier stirred a pot of sauce that smelled divine. So, he said as he handed her a glass of red wine, how was your week? It was such a normal, everyday question the kind people asked each other all the time. Yet Lorelei realized few people asked her that with genuine interest. Her conversations typically revolved around business metrics, strategic initiatives, or crisis management. Busy, she said finally. We're launching a new product line next month, so there's been a lot of preparation. What about you? Midterms, Xavier grimaced. Which means hours of grading artistic interpretations of what inspires you. Some are genuinely moving, others. He laughed. Let's just say teenagers can be very literal in their interpretations. Dinner was served family style at a small dining table, spaghetti with Xavier's homemade sauce, garlic bread, and a simple salad. The meal was delicious, far better than many Lorelei had eaten at expensive restaurants. Emma dominated the conversation again, telling elaborate stories about school and friends. Xavier occasionally guided her back on track when she became too tangential, but mostly he let her express herself freely. Lorelei found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. There were no expectations here, no need to impress or negotiate. It was simply a pleasant dinner with friends. Was that what they were becoming? After dinner, Xavier sent Emma to get ready for bed while he and Lorelei cleaned up. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, falling into an easy rhythm. She's usually in bed by 8:30, Xavier explained as he put away the last of the dishes. Would you like to see my workshop after? It's nothing special, just the converted garage, but you mentioned wanting to see the process. I'd love that, Lorelei said. First, though, they went to say goodnight to Emma, who insisted Lorelei read her a bedtime story. Xavier looked like he might object, but Lorelei quickly agreed, settling into the chair beside Emma's bed with a well-worn copy of The Paper Bag Princess. When the story was finished and Emma was drifting off to sleep, Lorelei followed Xavier through a side door that led directly to his workshop. Unlike the program's garage, which was primarily functional, Xavier's personal space reflected years of dedication to his craft. Tools were arranged with precision, wood of various types stored carefully on custom shelves. A project stood half-completed on his workbench, what appeared to be a rocking chair with elegant curves. This is beautiful, Lorelei said, running her fingers along the smooth wood. It's for Emma, Xavier explained. A Christmas gift. She's outgrown her old one. You made her previous one, too. Xavier nodded. When she was 3, she's used it every day since. Lorelei was touched by the thoughtfulness behind the gift. Would you show me how you work? Just a little demonstration. Xavier seemed pleased by her interest. He selected a small piece of cherry wood and began explaining the properties of different woods, how to read the grain, the importance of proper tools. As he worked, his hands moved with confidence and precision, transforming the wood with seemingly effortless skill. Lorelei watched, fascinated not just by the process, but by the change in Xavier himself. He became more animated, his passion for his craft evident in every word and gesture. This was clearly where he felt most comfortable, most himself. "Would you like to try?" he asked suddenly, offering her the tool he was using. "Oh, I couldn't," Lorelei protested. "I'd ruin your work." "This is just a scrap piece," Xavier assured her. "Come here." Hesitantly, Lorelei stepped forward. Xavier positioned himself behind her, guiding her hands with his own. "Like this," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear as he showed her how to make a simple cut. Lorelei was acutely aware of his closeness, the solid warmth of him at her back. For a moment, neither of them moved, caught in an unexpected intimacy. Xavier stepped back first, clearing his throat. "You've got a steady hand," he said. "That's important in woodworking." "I've always been good with detailed work," Lorelei replied, her voice not quite steady. "Comes in handy with circuit boards, too." They continued talking about his projects, the conversation gradually returning to a comfortable rhythm. Xavier showed her pieces he'd completed over the years, explaining techniques and challenges. Lorelei found herself genuinely interested, asking questions that revealed her quick grasp of the principles involved. "It's getting late," Xavier said finally, looking at his watch. "I should probably call you a car." Lorelei checked her own watch, surprised to find it was nearly midnight. "I didn't realize the time," she admitted. "I've enjoyed this evening tremendously, Xavier." "So have I," he said quietly. "It's been different in a good way." As they walked back through the house toward the front door, Lorelei made a decision. "I'd like to see you again," she said directly. "Not for the foundation or any business reason, just you and me." Xavier looked surprised, then pleased. "I'd like that too." "What about tomorrow?" Lorelei suggested. "We could take Emma to the Museum of Natural History, if you're free, that is." "She'd love that," Xavier said. "So would I." At the door, there was a moment of awkwardness, neither sure how to say goodbye. Finally, Lorelei leaned in and kissed Xavier's cheek lightly. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "I'll see you tomorrow." As she walked to the corner where her driver waited, Lorelei felt lighter than she had in years. There was something about Xavier Porter that made her feel like herself, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Lorelei. The next day was one of the most enjoyable Saturdays Lorelei could remember. Emma's excitement at the museum was infectious, her wonder at the dinosaur skeletons and dioramas making everything seem new again. Xavier was a patient, engaged father, answering Emma's endless questions and encouraging her curiosity. What surprised Lorelei most was how natural it felt to be with them. She found herself holding Emma's hand as they moved through crowded exhibits, discussing fossil records with Xavier, laughing at Emma's amazement when they entered the planetarium. After the museum, they had lunch at a nearby diner, then walked through Central Park as the autumn leaves fell around them. Emma collected colorful leaves, presenting the best ones to Lorelei as though offering precious gifts. "Daddy says pretty things should be shared," she explained, pressing a perfect red maple leaf into Lorelei's hand. "Your daddy is very wise," Lorelei replied, carefully placing the leaf in her purse. When it was time to say goodbye, Emma hugged Lorelei tightly. "Can we do this again tomorrow?" she asked hopefully. "Not tomorrow, sweetheart," Xavier answered for Lorelei. "Miss Foster has her own life and responsibilities." "Actually," Lorelei said, "I'm free next weekend too if you'd like to do something then." Xavier looked at her with a mixture of surprise and pleasure. "We would." "Very much." That night, alone in her penthouse, Lorelei realized she'd spent an entire day without checking her email or taking a business call, something that hadn't happened in years. Even more surprising was that she didn't regret it. Over the next few weeks, Lorelei found herself spending more and more time with Xavier and Emma. They visited museums, walked in parks, cooked meals together in Xavier's small kitchen. Xavier came to her penthouse once, looking uncomfortable amid the luxury, until Lorelei showed him her small workshop, where she tinkered with electronics a space that made his eyes light up with recognition of a fellow creator. They were careful, neither rushing whatever was developing between them. Xavier never presumed on Lorelai's wealth, always insisting on paying his fair share when they went out, accepting her treats for Emma but rarely for himself. Lorelai respected his pride, understanding it came from self-sufficiency rather than ego. The grant for the woodworking program was processed with record speed, and Xavier found a suitable space to rent not far from the school. Lorelai helped with the logistics, but was careful to let the program remain Xavier's vision. She attended the grand opening of the new workshop space, hanging back as Xavier and his students proudly showed off their new equipment and facilities to community members and press. "You should be up there with them," Maria said, appearing beside Lorelai. "This wouldn't have happened without you." "It's Xavier's achievement," Lorelai replied. "He built this program from nothing. The money just helped it grow." Maria gave her a knowing look. "He likes you, you know. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Lorelai felt a flutter in her chest but kept her expression neutral. "We're friends. He's been very kind to me." "Mr. Porter is kind to everyone," Maria said with a shrug. "This is different." She wandered off to help a younger student with a demonstration, leaving Lorelai to her thoughts. Later that evening, after the event had ended and Emma had gone to spend the night at a friend's house, Xavier and Lorelai walked through the empty workshop. "You've changed these kids' lives," Lorelai said softly. "You should be proud." "I couldn't have done it without you," Xavier replied. "This space, the equipment, it's beyond what I ever imagined." "You had the vision," Lorelai insisted. "All I did was provide resources." Xavier stopped walking and turned to face her. "You did much more than that, Lorelai. You believed in us, in me." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. They stood close, the silence between them charged with unspoken feelings. "Xavier," Lorelai began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wished, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been wanting to do that all night," he admitted. "Is that all you've been wanting to do?" Lorelai asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Xavier smiled slightly. "No," he said, and leaned forward to kiss her. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. When Lorelai responded, sliding her hands up to his shoulders, Xavier deepened the kiss, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "I've been thinking about doing that for weeks," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" Lorelai asked. "Honestly, you intimidate me a little," Xavier said with a self-deprecating smile. "Not because of your success or wealth, but because you're you. Brilliant, driven, beautiful. I wasn't sure what you'd want with someone like me." "Someone like you," Lorelai repeated. "You mean someone kind, talented, dedicated, and genuine. Someone who's a wonderful father and teaches children to create beauty with their hands." "Yes, why would I possibly be interested in that?" Xavier laughed. "When you put it that way." "I haven't felt this way in a long time," Lorelai admitted. "Maybe ever." "You make me see the world differently, Xavier." He kissed her again, more confidently this time. "Does this mean you'll go on an official date with me, just the two of us?" "I'd like that," Lorelai smiled. "Very much." Their first official date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Manhattan, followed by a walk along the High Line. Xavier had dressed up in what was clearly his best suit, and Lorelai had deliberately chosen a simple dress rather than one of her usual designer outfits. They talked about everything and nothing: childhood memories, favorite books, places they'd like to visit. Xavier spoke about his dreams for the woodworking program, while Lorelai shared her vision for Foster Innovation's future projects. "What about you personally?" Xavier asked as they walked hand in hand. "What dreams do you have that aren't about the company?" The question caught Lorelai off guard. Her personal and professional goals had been intertwined for so long, she struggled to separate them. "I used to want a family," she admitted finally. "But as the company grew, it seemed less and less feasible. There was always another milestone to reach, another challenge to overcome. "And now?" Xavier asked gently. Lorelei looked at him, allowing herself to be vulnerable in a way she rarely was. "Now I'm not sure. Meeting you and Emma has made me think about it again." Xavier squeezed her hand but didn't press further, giving her space to process her own thoughts. As winter settled over New York, Lorelei found herself spending most weekends and many evenings with Xavier and Emma. They decorated a Christmas tree together in Xavier's living room, baked cookies from Xavier's mother's recipes, and built an elaborate snow fort in the backyard after the first significant snowfall. Lorelei invited them to her company's holiday gala, introducing Xavier proudly to her colleagues. If anyone was surprised to see their CEO with a high school teacher from Queens, they were too professional to show it, at least to her face. For Christmas, Xavier gave Lorelei a jewelry box he had made himself, with her initials inlaid in contrasting wood on the lid. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a small wooden heart charm, also handcrafted. "It's beautiful," Lorelei said, fighting unexpected tears as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist. "Emma helped with the design," Xavier admitted. "She insisted you needed a heart." "She was right," Lorelei smiled. As always, Lorelei's gift to Xavier was a set of rare Japanese carving tools she'd imported directly from a master craftsman in Kyoto. For Emma, she'd found a child-sized workbench with real but safe tools, designed for young woodworkers. Emma's reaction was everything Lorelei had hoped for: pure joy and excitement, immediately wanting to start a project. But it was Xavier's face that affected her most deeply. He looked at her with such tenderness that Lorelei felt a warmth spread through her entire being. "Thank you," he said simply, the words carrying far more meaning than just gratitude for the gift. That evening, after Emma had finally been persuaded to leave her new workbench and go to bed, Xavier and Lorelei sat close together on his couch, the Christmas tree lights casting a soft glow over the room. "I've been thinking," Xavier said hesitantly. "It feels strange to keep introducing you as my friend, to Emma, to my colleagues, even to myself." Lorelei turned to face him. "What would you prefer? Partner seems inadequate. Girlfriend sounds like we're teenagers." Xavier smiled. "But I know what I feel. I love you, Lorelei. I think I have since that first dance at the wedding." Lorelei felt a surge of emotion so strong it momentarily robbed her of speech. She'd known for weeks how she felt about Xavier, but hearing him say the words first made something settle inside her, a certainty she hadn't realized she was waiting for. "I love you too," she said finally, the words feeling both foreign and perfectly right on her tongue. "You and Emma have become the most important people in my life." Xavier kissed her, a kiss filled with promise and possibility. "Stay tonight," he whispered against her lips. "I want to wake up with you on Christmas morning." Lorelei nodded, not trusting herself to speak. That night, in Xavier's modest bedroom with its handcrafted furniture and simple comforts, Lorelei discovered a kind of intimacy she'd never experienced before. It wasn't just physical, though that aspect was undeniably powerful, but emotional. A connection that made her feel simultaneously vulnerable and completely safe. Afterward, lying in Xavier's arms, Lorelei felt a peace she'd never known. The constant mental calculations that had been her companions for years, what's next, how to leverage this situation, what threats to anticipate, were quiet for once, replaced by a simple contentment. "What are you thinking?" Xavier asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I'm happy," Lorelei replied honestly. "Truly happy. It's an unfamiliar feeling." Xavier kissed her forehead. "You deserve happiness, Lorelei, not just success, though you've certainly earned that too, but joy, love, all of it." "So do you," she said softly. "You work so hard for everyone else, Emma, your students. You deserve someone who puts you first sometimes." "Is that what you want to do?" Xavier asked, a hint of playfulness in his voice. "Sometimes," Lorelei smiled. "When you're not being stubborn." Xavier laughed, pulling her closer. "I'm never stubborn. Determined, maybe. Focused." "Stubborn," Lorelei insisted, kissing him lightly, "but I love you anyway." Christmas morning brought Emma bursting into the bedroom at an hour Lorelei normally only saw from the other side after working through the night. Xavier had warned her and laid out a t-shirt and sweatpants for her to sleep in, knowing his daughter's enthusiasm wouldn't wait for propriety. Emma barely registered Lorelei's presence beyond a cheerful, Merry Christmas, before dragging them both to the living room to see what Santa had brought. The day was filled with simple joys, opening gifts, preparing a festive meal together, playing board games by the fire. Xavier's mother joined them for dinner, a warm, practical woman who welcomed Lorelei with genuine interest rather than the star-struck awkwardness Lorelei had feared. "My son talks about you constantly," Margaret Porter told Lorelei as they washed dishes together. "I haven't seen him this happy in years." "He makes me happy too," Lorelei admitted. "Happier than I've ever been." Margaret nodded approvingly. "That's what matters. All that other stuff, money, status, it means nothing if there's no love." As winter turned to spring, Lorelei found herself increasingly dividing her time between her penthouse and Xavier's home. She kept a drawer of clothes at his place, and he gradually accumulated a small selection of items at hers. Emma adjusted to Lorelei's presence in their lives with the resilience of children, soon treating her as a natural part of their family unit. There were challenges, of course. Lorelei's work sometimes required last-minute travel or late nights that disrupted plans. Xavier occasionally struggled with the disparity in their financial situations, particularly when Lorelei wanted to treat them to experiences beyond his means. They argued, reconciled, and grew stronger through each disagreement. The tabloids eventually caught on to their relationship, publishing photos of the tech titan and teacher with speculative headlines about Lorelei, slumming it, or Xavier being a gold digger. Xavier took the attention with good humor, though he was fiercely protective of Emma's privacy. "Does it bother you?" Lorelei asked after a particularly invasive article appeared. "Being in the public eye because of me?" "I only care what you think of me," Xavier replied. "And Emma, of course. The rest is just noise." In April, Foster Innovations launched a major new product, an accessible coding platform designed for educational use. Xavier and Emma attended the gala launch event, Xavier handsome in a new suit that Lorelei had finally convinced him to accept as a gift. Emma excited about her fancy dress and the chance to see where Lorelei worked. During Lorelei's speech, she departed from her prepared remarks to acknowledge Xavier's influence on the educational aspects of the platform. "My partner, Xavier Porter, has provided invaluable insights from his experience as an educator. This product is better because of his perspective." The public acknowledgement brought a flush to Xavier's cheeks, but also a proud smile that made Lorelei's heart swell. Later that night, after Emma had been picked up by Xavier's mother for a sleepover, Xavier and Lorelei returned to her penthouse. They stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights, Lorelei still in her evening gown, Xavier with his tie loosened. "I've been thinking," Lorelei said, turning to face him. "This arrangement we have, splitting time between two places, it's becoming complicated." Xavier's expression grew serious. "I know, for you especially, going back and forth." "I was wondering if you might consider a change," Lorelei continued carefully, "something more permanent." "What did you have in mind?" Xavier asked, a cautious hope in his voice. "Us living together," Lorelei said. "All of us, you, me, Emma." Xavier took her hands in his. "I've been thinking about it too, but there are practicalities to consider. Emma's school is near our house. My work is there." "I know," Lorelei nodded. "That's why I was thinking we could look for a new place. Somewhere that works for all of us. Not my penthouse, it's not really suited for a child, and not your current house, but something that could be ours together." "You'd be willing to move to Queens?" Xavier looked surprised. "I'd be willing to move anywhere to be with you and Emma," Lorelei said simply. "My office is mostly for show anyway. I can work from anywhere." Xavier pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. And yes, I think we should find a place together. The search for a home that satisfied both their needs took time. Xavier insisted on contributing equally to the purchase, which limited their options compared to what Lorelei could have afforded alone. Eventually, they found a compromise, a brownstone in a family-friendly neighborhood with good schools, not far from Xavier's work. Lorelei would handle the renovations to create a workshop for Xavier in the basement and a home office for herself. "Are you sure about this?" Xavier asked as they signed the papers in early summer. "It's a big change from your penthouse." "I'm sure about us," Lorelei replied confidently. "The rest is just details." Moving day arrived in July, just after Emma finished first grade. The brownstone was a blend of their styles, Lorelei's clean, modern aesthetic softened by Xavier's handcrafted wooden furniture and Emma's colorful artwork. The basement workshop exceeded Xavier's wildest dreams, and Lorelei's home office featured large windows overlooking the garden where she could watch Emma play while on conference calls. That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep in her new bedroom decorated just as she'd requested, with a space theme and display shelves for her growing collection of wooden creations, Xavier and Lorelei sat on their back patio, enjoying the warm summer night. "Happy?" Xavier asked, his arm around Lorelei's shoulders. "Completely," she replied, leaning into him. "I never imagined my life could look like this." "Like what?" "So full," Lorelei said after a moment's reflection. "Not just with things or achievements, but with love, with family. With meaning beyond the next business goal." Xavier kissed the top of her head. "You've changed my life too, you know, not just with the program funding, though that's been incredible, but by showing me it was possible to love again, to trust someone with my heart and with Emma's." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of their new neighborhood. "I have something for you," Xavier said eventually, reaching into his pocket. "I was going to wait, but this moment feels right." He pulled out a small wooden box one Lorelei recognized as his own craftsmanship and opened it to reveal a ring. It was simple but beautiful, a platinum band with a modest diamond surrounded by intricate wooden inlay work. "I made the inlay myself," Xavier said, suddenly looking nervous. "It's rosewood, the same wood as that first piece I showed you how to carve." Lorelei felt tears well in her eyes as Xavier slid from the chair to one knee before her. "Lorelei Foster, you walked into my life unexpectedly at my cousin's wedding, and everything changed. You've brought joy, love, and possibilities I never imagined. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Lorelei whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Xavier, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, Lorelei marveled at how completely her life had transformed in less than a year. From a solitary existence focused entirely on business success to this, a home, a family, a love she'd never dared to dream possible. "Emma's going to be so excited," Xavier murmured against her lips. Lorelei laughed softly. "She asked me last week when we were going to get married. I think she's been planning this longer than we have." "She's perceptive," Xavier agreed. "Gets that from me." "Of course she does," Lorelei teased, kissing him again. They were married that December in a small ceremony at their home, with Emma as the flower girl and ring bearer combined. Lorelei wore a simple white gown, Xavier a well-tailored suit. The woodworking program students created decorations for the event, transforming the house into a winter wonderland of wooden snowflakes and elegantly carved candle holders. In her vows, Lorelei spoke of unexpected beginnings and the courage to change course when love points in a new direction. Xavier promised to create beauty with her every day, not just in wood, but in moments and memories. Emma, not to be left out, had written her own speech, solemnly promising to keep my room clean most of the time and help Lorelei learn all our family traditions. After the ceremony, as they danced together in their living room surrounded by their closest friends and family, Xavier whispered in Lorelei's ear, "Did you ever imagine, that night at the wedding, that we'd end up here?" "Never," Lorelei admitted, leaning back to look into his eyes. But now, I can't imagine being anywhere else. As midnight approached and their guests began to depart, Lorelei found herself in the kitchen with Maria, who had become the full-time assistant instructor for the woodworking program after graduating college. "I knew it, Maria said with a satisfied smile. "That first day you came to the workshop, I could see how you looked at him." Lorelei laughed. "Was I that obvious?" To someone paying attention, Maria nodded. "You both were. It was just a question of who would admit it first." Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the garden with white. Xavier appeared in the doorway, Emma sleepy in his arms. "I think someone needs to go to bed," he said softly. "She's fighting it, but she's fading fast." "I'm not tired," Emma protested weakly, her eyes already half closed. "Of course not," Lorelei agreed, stroking the girl's hair. "But how about we all go upstairs anyway? It's been a big day." Together they climbed the stairs, a family in every sense that mattered. As Xavier tucked Emma into bed, the child looked up at Lorelei with sleepy eyes. "You're really my mom now, right?" she asked. Lorelei felt tears spring to her eyes. "If you want me to be," she said carefully. "I would love that, but I know you have a mother already." "I have a mommy who lives far away," Emma said matter-of-factly. "But I think I can have a mom, too, who lives with us and loves us every day." "Then yes," Lorelei said, her voice thick with emotion. "I am really your mom now, and I will love you every single day for the rest of my life." Satisfied, Emma closed her eyes, drifting quickly into sleep. Xavier wrapped his arm around Lorelei's waist as they watched their daughter sleep. "She's right, he said quietly. "You've been more of a mother to her in this past year than Olivia has been since she left." "I'll never try to replace her birth mother," Lorelei said seriously. "But I will always be here for her, no matter what." "I know," Xavier said, kissing her temple. "That's one of the countless reasons I love you." They slipped out of Emma's room and into their own bedroom, where Xavier pulled Lorelei into his arms. "Mrs. Porter," he said with a smile. "That has a nice ring to it." "Actually," Lorelei said with a mischievous grin, "I was thinking we might both become Porter Fosters. Professionally, I'll still use Foster for continuity, but legally, I'd like us to share a name, all three of us." Xavier considered this. Xavier Porter Foster. "Emma Porter Foster, Lorelei Porter Foster." He nodded approvingly. "I like it. A new name for our new family." "Our family," Lorelei repeated, the words still wondrous to her. "Sometimes I still can't believe how lucky I am. That I happened to be at that wedding, that you happened to catch my eye across the room." "It wasn't luck," Xavier said seriously. "It was Emma getting chocolate ice cream all over her dress. Very strategic on her part." Lorelei laughed. "In that case, I owe her chocolate ice cream whenever she wants it for the rest of her life." "Don't tell her that," Xavier groaned. "We'll never hear the end of it." As they prepared for bed, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who had found their perfect match, Lorelei reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a chance meeting at a wedding reception to this a shared life, a home filled with love, a future bright with possibility. "What are you thinking about?" Xavier asked as they settled into bed together. "About how sometimes the most important business decision is knowing when to stop focusing on business entirely," Lorelei replied. "If I hadn't gone to that wedding, if I hadn't looked up at exactly the right moment." "But you did," Xavier said simply, pulling her close. "And here we are." "Here we are," Lorelei agreed, resting her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Exactly where we're meant to be." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering their garden, their neighborhood, their city in a clean white blanket. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Lorelei and Xavier drifted to sleep, secure in the knowledge that what they had found together was rarer and more precious than any fortune a love that had transformed them both, creating from two separate lives one beautiful, shared journey.